Hello everyone, my name is IBK and we started a new model. It's Roman art and archaeology. In the last two models, we talked about stress at work and media literacy. This model is completely different, but still, I think it's a interesting um, topic. And we started from the second week because the first week was all about introduction, and second model is where it starts. So we'll talk about the early Romans and their ancestors. So what are their ancestors? There are multiple influential figures in the history, but in this week's model, we will be talking about Italy, to be exact. And while we're talking about Italy, we will also mention art and archaeology as well. So let's start then. This is Italy, as you guys can see. Italy has been staying the same for lots of times, but maybe they gone from like Austria and Slovenia and Switzerland, but mostly they stayed in this boot-shaped country, peninsula. And the early Italians. We'll talk about the early Italians. The world of early Iron Age in Italy, we all know what Iron Age is, consisted of cultures moving into northern and central Italy, from the north a little before 1000th century, not 1000 before Christ BC, and mixing with earlier Bronze Age cultures already present, like Villanovans, Latins, Greeks. So the Romes have been inspired by Latins, Greeks, Italians. Like, I'm not talking about Italy, but you know what I mean. They've been influenced by these civilizations. Their art's been influenced, their culture has been influenced, and their architecture has been influenced. All of artistic materials have been influenced by those civilizations that has been active in that time. We talked about Italy's first comings, but what about the people of ancient Italy? So they've been influenced by those cultures, and if you get influenced by other cultures, you actually become them. Like, there are like most of the European cultures as well. But here's a fun fact that I thought it was interesting. In the early Italian culture, dead people mostly got cremated and burned instead of burying them. And there is a almost religious reason for that. And what is it? It's also mythological. So when you bury these dead bodies in soil, it's like betraying the soil that has given you so much, like food, things like that. So walking over these soils creates a bad energy, and it actually destroys civilizations. There is a belief that this is something like that. So that's why there is a little findings about the dead bodies in Italy, Rome. That's because they were mostly cremated and burned because of their beliefs. Um, Also, the bodies, the bones that were been found, actually they can't stand that long. But if they do, mostly belonged to peasants, not noble people, and mostly men, but also women were cremated too. So, we will also talk about the Etruscans. As the 7th century BC came into existence, a number of fundamental changes occurred that proved to be critically important for the creation of historical Italy. That was from a period we are considering is traditionally known as the Orientalizing period, a time between 700 and 600 BC or BCE. So the Etruscans came to life between those times, and they were heavily influencing Rome and Italy, and they were very powerful, so powerful that they were powerful enough to spread southward and even take over Rome eventually. So this is the map that they have been conquered, and we have multiple paintings and carvings of them, historical figures. So they're actually very important for the Rome's past and Italy's past because they were able to take over Rome. That's how powerful they were. And since the object of this model is to teach us about Rome's art uh, and archaeology, the archaeologist found this famous vase. The Etruscans were Rome's neighbors to the north, as we've established, right? And the Romans were sometimes friendly with some of the Etruscan city-states, but they were mostly hostile because that's how the things went back then. However, Greek culture and art were popular in Etruria, and they were mostly influential. Some of the most famous Greek vases were found in Etruria and Etruscan tombs. This was the vase, and it is called Francois vase. Excuse me if I'm pronouncing it wrong, but it's Francois vase, and it's actually very popular in that community. The Francois vase is very important because it is one of the largest symposium vase that was made in Athens, which means a big mixing bowl for wine and water, and we all know how important wine and water is back then. It was basically essential. It is painted and potted by two men of whose we know the names of. Because it has several myths painted on it related to the figure of Achilles and Theseus, and mainly the wedding pomp, the wedding procession of Peleus and Theseus, Achilles' parents. So, if you're close with mythology, you will know these figures, the Achilles and Theseus and Peleus. They are actually very important figures in the mythological history, and they were painted back then, and it was actually one of the most important findings archaeologically back then. So this shows how much they were invested in arts as well as fights and things like that and wars, but they were also very keen on arts as well. And that was all for the first week's model. Thank you for listening to me.